Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're diving into the world of team training, but we're not talking about, those classic trust falls or anything like that. We're going way more high tech. Think cutting edge simulations. So, EON Reality. This is a company leading the way in VR and AR for education. You
Yeah.
know,
hmm
well, they're rolling out something called team-based scenario simulation. And honestly, from everything we've seen so far, this could be a total game changer for how we think about training teams.
It's definitely a huge leap forward, I think. We've got a press release and even a full white paper they put out all about how this new approach works.
Oh, wow. That's great. So what's got you personally most excited about all this?
Well, I think the core of this technology is really all about, how it tries to address the biggest weaknesses of how we traditionally do training? I mean, just think about it for a second. Lectures, even those solo simulations we've had, they don't really capture the reality of how teams actually work together. Because the real world, you're almost never making decisions completely on your own.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's all about how everyone works together, right? And sometimes that even means disagreeing with each other in a healthy way to get to those shared goals.
Exactly. So that's where this EON Reality team-based scenario simulation comes in. It puts multiple people all at once right into these super realistic scenarios, virtually, of course, and they have to figure out how to work together. And honestly, I think this focus on making it feel real is what makes this such a big deal.
I see. And yeah, the press release keeps using this phrase, enhanced realism.
Hmm.
What exactly do they mean by that?
Well, they're talking about recreating the pressures you feel in an actual job. So picture this a whole team of nurses. They're responding to like a crazy emergency situation. But it's all happening in this virtual hospital they made. Now they have to talk to each other really clearly. They're making decisions with almost no time, dividing up tasks, all while working together as a team. You just can't learn that from reading some boring training manual.
You're right about that. So it sounds like with this, it's not just about learning facts. It's about actually being able to use those facts when things get tough. And I'm seeing here that it's not just for healthcare, right? Eon Reality is saying this could work in tons of fields. From restaurants and hotels to businesses, even schools could use this.
Absolutely. And one example that really stood out to me was how companies could use this for training new employees. So instead
Mhm.
of, sitting through weeks of presentations and workshops, imagine a whole team of new hires thrown right into a tough negotiation or having to present in a virtual boardroom. This way they'd learn all about the company culture, they get better at talking to each other, and they even get to mess up a little, all without any real-world consequences.
I can see why you're excited about this. Okay, this is where I'm getting really interested because the white paper is talking about how this can actually make people learn faster and make better decisions. How does running a simulation actually do that?
Well, a lot of it comes down to this idea of accelerated experience. It's kind of like squeezing months or even years of real world experience into a much shorter amount of time. Because in the simulation, the team gets to face so many different situations and problems, way more than they ever could in the same time out in the real world.
So they're learning by actually doing things,
Mm,
but it's super speed.
yeah,
And I guess that would naturally make them better at making decisions because they're getting feedback so much faster, right?
exactly. You got it. It lets teams try different things, see what happens because of their choices, and change up their plans on the fly. And here's the cool part. The simulation keeps track of all their data, so they can go back and analyze how they made decisions and figure out where they can do even better.
Data is definitely key these days. And speaking of data, the white paper talks about something called performance analytics. What exactly is that and how does it fit in here?
So EON Reality has put together a really powerful system for tracking how teams do in these simulations. And it's not just about, pass or fail. It's about really understanding all the tiny details of how a team works together, how they communicate, and how they make those tough decisions. The platform can actually pinpoint those moments where things slow down, highlight where communication breaks down, and even find those individuals who might need extra help with specific skills. Having this data-driven insight, it lets you do really targeted training and development. You just wouldn't be able to get that with the old ways of doing things.
Wow, that's
Thanks.
incredible. It's amazing how much information they're able to pull out of these simulations. But
Yeah, it really is cutting edge stuff.
Mhm.
Hashtag TTS, the deep dive episode 2025-0120, part 2 of 3. And what's really cool is that this data, it's not just a one-time thing. You can actually track it over lots of different simulations. So teams can see how they're getting better over time. Imagine being able to see exactly when their communication starts clicking or when they start making decisions smoother. That kind of detailed insight is super valuable.
it's like you have this powerful microscope and you can zoom in on all those little interactions, You know, the ones that make or break a team's success.
You got it. And here's where it gets even bigger. It's not just about individual teams getting better. Think about companies using this data to figure out the best ways to work together, to create training programs that actually work, and even see how they stack up against other companies in their industry. It could completely change how we develop talent.
That's a really interesting point. I hadn't even thought about it on that level.
Uh-huh.
But let's bring it back down to the individual experience for a second. The white paper mentions something called AI-driven adaptivity. What does that look like in practice?
Okay, so imagine this. You're in the simulation, but the virtual world around you, it's not just some fixed thing. It actually changes based on what your team is doing. Let's say your team makes a big mistake. Suddenly, the simulation could get harder, throw in some unexpected problems, or even a totally crazy curveball that forces you to rethink everything.
So it's not just going through a set script.
But
It's more like this living system that learns and adapts right alongside the people in it.
precisely. And the best part about using AI like this is that it creates a truly personalized experience for everyone. The simulation can adjust the challenges to match each team's strengths and weaknesses. So everyone is pushed a little bit outside their comfort zone. That's where people really grow.
I like how they built that in. And I'm guessing you could create simulations for just about any industry or situation, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the most amazing things about this technology, how versatile it is. EON Reality is basically saying this is a platform that can be tweaked and customized to fit any organization's needs. It doesn't matter if you're training doctors and nurses, or onboarding new employees, or even getting a team ready for some high-stakes international negotiation. The possibilities are endless.
So it seems like they've really put a lot of thought into the practical side of things,
Yeah.
how to make this something that a lot of different people can actually use. But what about implementation? How easy is it for companies to actually set this up?
They've covered that too. In the white paper, they talk about the technical stuff you need, the security measures to keep everything safe, and how to integrate it into different types of companies. They've also created a whole support system with training for people who will be running the simulations and ongoing help if you run into problems. It's clear they want to make this easy to use and accessible.
That's great to hear. So if someone is listening to this right now and they're thinking, this sounds awesome, but how do I actually get started? What would you tell them?
Well, the first thing is to figure out what their team or company really needs. What are the biggest problems they're facing? What skills are missing or need to be improved? Once they know what they want to achieve, then they can start looking at the different simulations and ways to customize them.
And what about the actual process of setting this up within a company? It sounds like it could be a pretty big project.
EON Reality has a few different ways to do it, from programs where you can basically learn and set it up yourself, to fully custom solutions where they have dedicated teams to help you every step of the way. They know that each company is different, and they've made sure their offerings are flexible enough to adapt to those needs.
That makes sense. I'm also wondering about how scalable this tech is. Could a small business with not a lot of money really use this type of training? Or is it mostly for those big corporations with huge budgets?
That's a great question, and honestly, one of the things I really liked about EON Reality's approach is how much they focus on making this accessible to everyone. They have different pricing options and ways to set it up to make it work for companies of all sizes. So a big corporation might go all out, with the super immersive multi-user system and all the fancy hardware, but a smaller company could start with something simpler, like a cloud-based solution that uses VR headsets they already have, or even just regular computer screens.
So they're trying to make this cutting-edge training available to everyone. That's pretty amazing. I can see how this could really help smaller companies, give them the tools they need to compete with those giants.
Exactly. It's all about giving companies of all sizes the power to embrace the future of learning and development. And as this technology keeps getting better and more affordable, I think we're going to see a lot more companies using it in all kinds of industries.
It's definitely exciting to think about all the possibilities. It makes me wonder, where do you see this technology having the biggest impact down the road? Hashtag TTS, the Deep Dive, episode 2025-0120, part 3 of 3.
Well, it's tough to pick just one. But honestly, I think this could be huge for education. Like, imagine classrooms where history isn't just about memorizing names and dates from a textbook. What if students could actually travel back in time to ancient Rome? Experience the city, walk through the marketplace, or even witness a debate in the Senate.
That's a really cool idea. It'd be like those choose-your-own-adventure books we used to read as kids, but amped up 1,000 times.
Exactly. And think about how this could revolutionize science classes too. Instead of just reading about chemical reactions, students could run their own experiments virtually, you know, mix chemicals and see what happens, all in a safe environment where there's no risk of explosions or anything.
It would definitely make learning a lot more engaging and hands-on. Speaking of engaging, what about online education? Could this technology help bridge the gap between those physical classrooms and the online learning environment?
For sure. I mean, instead of just staring at a screen during a Zoom lecture, students could actually interact with each other and with what they're learning, all in a shared virtual space. Think about virtual field trips to museums across the world, or working on group projects in a simulated lab. It could really change how we think about remote learning.
That would be amazing. It seems like there's really no limit to what this technology could do.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one big takeaway you hope our listeners will remember? I think the most important thing to remember is that this team-based scenario simulation, it's not just some fancy new gadget. It's a totally new way of thinking about how we learn and train people. It's all about connecting what we learn in theory with what we actually do in practice, giving people the power to develop their skills in a way that's fun, engaging, and most importantly, effective.
That's a great way to put it. It's about embracing the future of learning. And it's clear that EON Reality is leading the way. So for our listeners who want to learn more, where should they go?
Well, the EON Reality website is a great place to start. They have tons of info on team-based scenario simulation, case studies, and even contact info if you're thinking about using it in your own company.
Perfect. And as always, you can find a link to their website, along with the press release and white paper we talked about today, in the show notes. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of team-based scenario simulation. It's been a fascinating conversation. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.